It's nice to see you. I am Dylan Radigan. How are you? We begin today with the foundation that you and I built on our Mad as Hell, Get Money Out campaign. It started with the rant last summer, and now we have not only created an organization and launched a petition, but it has exploded. In the past week, we set up a campaign right here on the show, and now more than 100,000 of you, more than 105,000 at last tally, have signed up to GetMoneyOut.com. The 100,000, as we all know, is a pittance, but it is the beginning of a massive wave that we can build into the conventions next year, and we will tell you how all of this is moving to the next phase later on in the show. But one thing that I do know is that the Get Money Out campaign must be across the totality of the political spectrum. It's an American issue, not a political issue. It can't be left or right or even a center issue. This is an issue of principle that we all share together. And unless we together, all of us, get money out of our politics, the debate we all need and desperately want on jobs, health care, banking, energy, war, cannot and will never get past a green curtain of money and influence that gives us a bought government sold at auction. You've heard of the Arab Spring. Well, my friends, behold the American autumn. Thousands at this hour at Wall Street Zuccotti Park with major labor unions joining the march for the day. In just a few minutes, the unions will march from their Foley Square staging area to Zuccotti Park. There's also massive university walkouts across the nation. Occupy colleges. The occupation is spreading, they say. Montana, North Carolina, Southern California, and of course right here in New York and dozens of other campuses. A growing number of occupiers adopting Get Money Out as their core objective to end the bought Congress. We welcome those in that community that agree with us. Republican presidential candidate and friend of this program, Congressman Ron Paul, is our first guest today. And Congressman, you and I both know that money has a toxifying effect on the nature of the debate. Your thoughts on what you are witnessing around this country today?
Well, there's no doubt that you're on to something because the money is a big deal. I deal with it on a personal sense that money doesn't influence me, and most people know that. I don't get the PAC money, and the lobbyists don't come and bother me. But, boy, I think this is it. People are sick and tired of it. But we have to look at the big picture, too, as well. You know, there's more money in the Fed who buys out the special interest, so we eventually have to deal with that, too. But it is really sick, and we see a lot on the surface, but there's money in the underground as well. They put it under the table, and who knows what is going on. But I think you touched on something when you talk about an auction. I think that is the right word. The government has so much to auction off, there's an incentive, so we have to deal with that incentive too. So if they're passing on contracts and favoritism and you have the Fed involved too, no wonder the people are upset. But you know, I find it interesting that they put up with it for a long time. A few of us were talking about it, but now everybody's starting to hurt. And of course, I guess maybe that's what you have to wait for. If people get hurt and realize there's something very bad going on and we have to deal with it. So hopefully we can accomplish it and get back to sensible government. But I'm holding my breath but doing the best I can.
You advised me, you and I did a recorded podcast, I don't know, a few months ago, and I asked you, Congressman, I said, what are we going to do about this, about the way the wind is blowing? And you said, well, somebody's got to change the air. It looks like the air is changing.
Boy, there's no doubt about it. These demonstrations, this is something that you and I have talked about before, but I've written about this too and talked about it in my speeches, that I expected this to come because I thought the country would eventually go broke. And we are at that point, and then the pie is shrinking, and then those people who want to influence government and make demands, they get louder and louder. So it is a major problem, and as important it is to deal with the political ramifications, but it's also the economics. Unless, you know, if everybody had a job, nobody would be worrying about this. But because people have lost their jobs and lost their homes and see people still getting these benefits, this remains a major problem for us.
If you look at the philosophy that you espouse, that the Federal Reserve at its center point controls capital, it invents money, and as a result of its ability to invent money, it distorts the flow of money, and it distorts a litany of things on a multi-hundred-trillion-dollar level. If you were to follow that progression, if the Fed creates and controls money, and then money is the vehicle by which our government is auctioned off, what are your thoughts on using a movement like the one that we're talking about, which is to advocate a constitutional amendment to intervene at that intersection between money and government? And I know that there's a philosophy of smaller government. My anxiety about that, without ending the auction, is it's fewer people to buy, so it might actually be easier.
Yeah, and if you don't remove the incentive, they're always going to be buying. I don't know enough to understand exactly how your amendment would affect the Federal Reserve, but you can't ignore that, because that's where, you know, very wealthy individuals get the bailouts, and international too. This is not only domestic. You know, we're preparing to bail out Europe as well. It's just, I'm amazed that the dollar holds up like it does.
The brilliance of the reserve currency.
Yeah, but even that, there are limits to it. But and as we have talked before, this thing is much bigger than I think the world has ever experienced before, because this has been going on for 40 years essentially, and the bubble's very big, and those dollars are overseas. They're probably $7 or $8 trillion overseas, and how they and where they go is a big issue. But I do know that it's coming to an end. We're in transition. We need the reforms. We need to show how money is the big deal up in, or how it's influenced it, and we have to get this auction turned off, because we have too much to lose if we don't do something.
It's insane. I would be grateful if you would consider reviewing the amendment at some point and coming back and offering us your thoughts, maybe an endorsement or an indictment, depending on your thoughts. I want to give you obviously the time to give it some consideration.
Okay. I'll look at it carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Ron Paul. Thank you, sir. Again, in announcing our draft of a constitutional amendment last week, you may remember, we had two Washington political pros with us. One, our own Jimmy Williams from the lobbying side,